Well, hi all, and welcome to 5 Ways to Simplify VM Management / Licensing Costs. Now, today's exciting webinar is sponsored by Hewlett Packard Enterprise and produced by Actual Tech Media. My name is Jess Steinbach. I'm with Actual Tech Media, and I'm so happy that I get to be here with all of you today on this lovely Tuesday. I hope it's a lovely Tuesday for all of you, and learn alongside all of you, because today we are going to get into some exciting, innovative, and actionable ways that you can transform your business by simplifying that VM management, lowering those software licensing costs and hypervisor techs, and best of all, doing all of this while effectively protecting VMs and data against threats. That all important protection element, right? So with the help of our expert presenters, we will explore best practices. We're going to talk about some trends, and again, those actionable ideas and insights for how you can optimize workloads and streamline operations in your organization. We have a great chat ahead of us. I cannot wait to bring our wonderful speakers on out here with me. So I'm going to zip through a few housekeeping points to help you get the most out of your time here with us today. All right, so let's start out with a little bit of a tour. We're going to explore your audience console today. Now, if you've been here many times before, you already know where we're going. We're going to start out with the questions window, because the questions window is the best place to get involved and get interactive. We have a big Q&A session planned ahead. Our speakers wanted to spend the vast majority of their time with you today really in open conversation. So we want to hear from you as we go through our session, and we're going to collect all of those wonderful questions, and we're going to dive in and explore once we're through our presentation here. So get your fingers limbered up right now, stretch them out, shake them out, and get some highs and hellos in. Let us know how you're doing. Tell us what you're up to today. Hey, Mike. Hey, Nick. Hey, Ishmael, Brian, I see Ali, I see Zhang, we've got Steven and Tomo and Linda and Paul, Gilbert. We've got a whole awesome crew with us. I want to keep hearing from you, so let me know how you're doing today. Say hi or hello, tell me what you're up to. And as we go throughout our day today, make sure you're getting those questions in. Now, that audience console is also the best place to reach out and let us know if you have a question about a technical issue. And by audience console, I mean the question tab in the audience console. Don't just shout at your console. But the very first thing that you're going to do is you're going to try a browser refresh. So if something isn't working today with slides or audio, something glitches a little bit, hopefully this doesn't come up. But the first thing you're going to try is a browser refresh. If that browser refresh doesn't work, post in the questions window, let us know, and our team will be there to help you out. All right, now if you go one tab over from the questions tab that we were just hanging out in, you will find the handouts tab. Now this handouts tab is absolutely packed with cool takeaways, awesome resources, and ways to follow up on our conversation today. So we are about to learn a lot of really exciting things, and you are going to want to spend more time with all those exciting things. You're going to want to tell your friends about all those exciting things. So if you would like to have a way to sort of jog your memory and dig in a little bit further once we wrap up, take those next action steps, visit the handouts tab right now. Make sure you open those links. Don't go too far down the rabbit hole yet. We've got lots of good stuff coming your way. So just open those links for now and hold on to them for after we wrap. All right, well, that was questions, that was handouts. So if you're following along on your slide there, you know that what's coming next are prize giveaways. We do have a $250 Amazon gift card that we will be giving away as a prize drawing at the end of our webinar. So stay tuned for that. Now, all winners must be here in live attendance during the webinar, and you do need to meet the Actual Tech Media prize terms and conditions. If you're not sure what those T's and C's are, no problem. Head on over to the handouts tab that we were just chatting about, click in, scroll down, and you will find the full terms and conditions waiting for you there. All right, well, that was a lot of information very quickly, and I'm sure that you are all as pumped up and ready to dive into the conversation as I am. So I'm going to get our wonderful speakers on out here with me right now. I am so excited to introduce you all to this dynamic duo here with us from HPE. We've got Calvin Zito, YouTuber and evangelist, Hewlett Packard Enterprise, and Bharath Ram, Director of Product Management, Private Cloud, also Hewlett Packard Enterprise. Calvin and Bharath, thank you so much for being here with us today. I know you have a ton of great info and some insights in store for us. And we, like I said, want to have a nice interactive Q&A at the end. So we got lots to do. Calvin, I think it's time we get this show on the road. I'm going to hand things on over to you. Take it away.
Hi, everyone. I am Calvin Zito, and I have been at HPE for over 40 years, and I will be celebrating 41 in just a few weeks, actually. And I'm glad to be with you today and host this discussion that we'll be having to look at 5 ways to simplify VM management and / licensing costs. And to have this discussion, I have an expert with me. Barath Ram is on our team that supports a lot of what we do around virtualization and private cloud and hybrid cloud. So Barath, why don't you introduce yourself to everybody and tell everyone why you're an expert to lead us in this conversation today.
Yeah, thank you, Calvin, for having me today. Really appreciate this opportunity. My name is Barath Ram. I lead the product management for private cloud, especially private cloud business edition. It's an exciting product, and there's a lot of need in the market for a private cloud today for multiple reasons. We are proud to offer that solution to our customers.
And I think what we're going to do is you had a really well-attended session at Discover. And even though Discover was now a couple months ago, it's still a timely discussion because this discussion about cloud and hybrid cloud and private cloud and public cloud and virtualization, it's kind of an endearing conversation that it's an important topic that just doesn't go away.
Yeah, I mean, virtualization is the talk of the town right now, right, for multiple reasons. Yeah, I mean, it was one of the most attended sessions at Discover this year, and for many reasons, right? Not just for the virtualization, but also how customers view the infrastructure today and how they can modernize and kind of transform the infrastructure is very critical.
Yeah. So maybe let's start with kind of a your personal opinion. You know, we've all seen kind of what Broadcom has done, a lot of the licensing changes. I've talked to some people that are, intimate with customers, and they're talking with customers all the time. And what they're telling me is customers that they've talked to are seeing anywhere from a 3x to a 10x increase in licensing fees. And I know, what some of the positioning I've seen is Broadcom is throwing in some additional pieces to some of the licensing packages to try and make it seem like this is a better deal than it sounds. But what are you seeing from what you understand of what Broadcom has done in terms of changing the licensing of VMware?
Yeah, I mean, obviously the changes to the licensing model around how VMware is provided to customers has thrown a lot of the infrastructure planning and setup into a flux, right? Because the overall TCO of the stack has considerably gone up. So there's customers looking at different options on how they could kind of make it more efficient, reduce the overall TCO of the stack has come up, right? And that compiled with other things around the amount of time they invest in the stack, trying to manage it, managing diverse environments because we're talking about hybrid cloud. So all that comes into play, but TCO is the core of these conversations that we usually have with customers.
So some of these issues that we talk about when we talk about cloud, whether we talk about public cloud, private cloud, hybrid cloud, I mean, it comes down to, customers are concerned about their budget. So what are some of the things that you are seeing that are driving people? I don't want to cloud bash at all, public cloud bash at all, but there's tons of people that are moving applications and moving data. They're repatriating it back to on-premises, whether it's in their data center or in a co-location, but because of challenges they're having with public cloud. What are some of the things that you're seeing that's causing a repatriation of data and apps from the public cloud?
Yeah, I mean, definitely public cloud has advantages, right? It provides great flexibility, agile way of consumption, and so forth. However, I attribute public cloud to more of living in a hotel versus living in your home. It's great initially, but if you're going to stay there for a couple of years, it's going to get really expensive, right? There is a need for public cloud where you want your developers or your app admins to kind of provision something, test out, or build something real quick and tear it down. But if you're going to host something for your customers in a long run, the bill adds up, right? There's also other factors around compliance, security, sovereign cloud, right? All those are being looked at right now. And that's why I feel there's going to be this mix of hybrid cloud going forward where you just cannot have just private or public, right? It has to be a good mix of both.
Yeah, and I think that's something that, certainly HPE has been talking about for a while, that hybrid cloud is really what people should be thinking about, that it should be hybrid by design, is kind of like the language that we use. And it's kind of a big focus of what we do. So customers are thinking about this, what should they be looking at? What kind of things are going to be important to them to decide whether or not, this app that's sitting in the public cloud today should be repatriated to either on premises or a co-location, but regardless in a private cloud?
Yeah, I think some of the big considerations for running an application in private cloud is again security and compliance, right? I mean, I've worked in insurance companies before where there is PCIe compliance that comes into play. In healthcare, there is HIPAA, right? Financial institutions have their own compliance as well, and of course with GDPR and stuff like that in Europe, there's huge pressures to bringing a lot of this on-prem in their geographically located data centers, right? So that all that needs to be considered. But I think the biggest problem is for customers, they have to figure out, because the world is going into more a hub and spoke model where you have deployments in the edge, you have deployments in core, right? There's infrastructure complexity. So I think a well-devised, strategized private cloud allows you to have different deployments, but managed through a single pane of glass, right? So that you could have ease of use and manageability workflows that's built into it.
So I want to throw you this big softball. I'm looking at the slides that you used at Discover, and you've got one that is kind of the title of today, of 5 ways to simplify VM management and lower your licensing costs. Talk me through those 5 ways. Introduce them, and I mean, you can drill down on any one of them that you think is more important than the other, but talk about those 5 ways of how people can simplify VM management and lower licensing costs.
Yeah, absolutely, Kelvin. I think so. When we presented this at Discover, we came up with a playbook, right? Essentially, because of the reasons we talked about earlier on this call, where customers are looking at ways to optimize their cost. So we came up with this 5-point playbook where they essentially would reevaluate the environment first, right? This is where they could look and understand the environment, because there's been some environments have been deployed in the past. So there's always room for us reassessment and see how we can optimize that. The second being agile, right? There should be a way where, customers are enabled to move to a more agile architecture, right? Where they can find more efficiencies and so forth, right? Strategizing on next gen architectures. It could be something like a disaggregated or a hyperconverged or a mix of both, right? Where applications can be migrated between them to kind of provide more efficiencies there itself. And of course, modernize, right? Modernize is essentially, not just look at running VMware, but is there any other alternatives in the market that could be supporting them to bring their overall costs down? Right? I think that's very, very, very critical for us. And of course, transformation. Transformation is essentially, running what they're running today, but seeing how they can transform, leveraging these points that I mentioned, right? And applying them to the existing infrastructure to reduce overall costs is how we look at transforming the environment, right? So it's a very simple 5-step playbook that we provide that allows customers to look at reducing the overall costs.
So you talked about evaluating infrastructure as being an important first step. And, I think I know that, one of the tools we have in the portfolio, an acquisition that we made, is Cloud Physics. Talk a little bit about Cloud Physics, because I don't think we give enough attention to it. I mean, I've done a chalk talk about it probably like a year and a half ago. But I just don't know that customers really have a good handle on what Cloud Physics is and how could they use this in that first step of reevaluating their current infrastructure.
Yeah, absolutely. And Cloud Physics actually is a magical tool, I would say. Actually, not many people know it's free, right? People can leverage today free of cost to reevaluate the infrastructure. And the beauty about Cloud Physics is it allows customers to understand what they have in the existing infrastructure, because often, as I said, there's so many assets and infrastructure and resources deployed that you just don't get the enormity of how that's sprawled over the years, right? With Cloud Physics, you can actually gain actionable insights, all right, about your inventory, your licensing, and resources, in fact, right? And the assessment, actually, the report that comes out can show over provisioning, that sometimes leads to, waste as well as hidden costs. So things like, right sizing VMs, because some VMs are just over provision and you only use like 30% of that resources that's been assigned to the VMs. So these are outcomes that customers can gain insight into, and that's the core value of what cloud physics provides here.
So let's talk about the next step. You talked about being agile and agility. What are we doing that we could help customers with that? What in what we offer gives customers that agility that they're not getting today in the public cloud?
Yeah, I think agility, as I mentioned, is very important and critical in this day and era because applications are spread across from edge to core to cloud. Um, it is a need of the hour right now to have a more simple, agile, global, manageable control plane, right? At the same time, providing a lot of automation end to end across these different facets. Things like one-stop VM management spanning clouds that is simple and automated, right? Also providing cloud setup or an update for the entire stack, right? Lifecycle management. These are things that is required so that the customer can spend more time developing applications and becoming more agile for their businesses rather than figuring out day-to-day management activities, right? So those are types of things that our customers are looking forward to so that they can make their infrastructure more agile going forward.
And I'm hesitant to make this too much about products and solutions that we offer, but I don't want to leave the agile without mentioning what you manage, which is Private Cloud Business Edition, HPE GreenLake for Private Cloud Business Edition. Talk a little bit. How does that help with being agile? Obviously that's what we're going to put forth as our way of being agile. So how does it help a customer be agile?
Yeah, absolutely. It's all linked together, right? In the sense that the customer needs to pick the right strategy and the architecture based on their requirements. Again, their requirements and needs define all of the architecture preferences that is done. So for introductions, for people who are not aware of what Private Cloud Business Edition is, it's basically an automated end-to-end solution where we provide our customers day zero, day one, and day two automation, not just for the infrastructure components, which I talked about, like setup and lifecycle management, but also provide automation around workload and application provisioning, right? Which could be VMs, it could be containers, and so forth. But I think, the goal here is also on the platform side. As I mentioned, picking the right architecture is important. As part of the Private Cloud Business Edition, we do have two platforms in the offering, right? One is a more disaggregated form factor where you could scale your compute and storage independently. And recently we announced the support for Electra Storage MP, right, where the storage itself is now disaggregated, which is pretty cool, and not many vendors do that. Similarly, on the other side of the spectrum, you have our SimpliVity product line, where if you need a small form factor, low cost, hyperconverged, you have that as well, right? But the beauty here is the experience, the manageability, the control plane all remains the same, right? Irrespective of what platform you choose. And then you can deploy any one of these based on, whether you're colo, you're at the edge or at the core, and manage them as one. And that's why, your strategizing and bringing your architecture comes into the forefront.
So let's push into that a little bit more, because I think that's important to go a little bit deeper on. I mean, you mentioned, SimpliVity, it can be part of what customers have in this, and it's because it's more of an edge solution. And I think, knowing what I know about SimpliVity, we're talking about you can start with 2 nodes, and that's a real advantage over what maybe some of the competition has. So let's maybe focus in on that piece of it for just a second and talk about the high availability that somebody gets from a 2-node SimpliVity.
Absolutely, and SimpliVity, is a very mature product in the market. We've had it for a while. We have a lot of customers leveraging it, and one of the architectural advantages that we have with SimpliVity is that you could get a highly available cluster with just 2 nodes, right? When compared to other alternatives in the market. So essentially, SimpliVity offers organizations with a kind of a lightweight, highly available 2-node deployment solution, right? That can potentially cut cost when compared to traditional, even 3-tier architecture for that matter, right? And other hyper-converged offerings in the market. And that's kind of the beauty of this product, right? Because it has things like native backup and recovery built into it. It has over the WAN deduplication built into it, right? So things where you can save on, data protection costs, your administrative costs, cost to acquire is way lower. Interesting fact is that, ESG, a third party vendor, they did an economic validation on SimpliVity, and it was found out to be the most cost effective solution for the edge, right? Where it's actually 66% less in terms of TCO than the cloud, and then 28% more savings than other hyperconverged vendors in the market.
Yeah, and we don't necessarily want to talk about who those other hyperconverged vendors are, but
yeah,
never mind. But you can imagine who they are. One of them owned by Dell, and another one that has been a big hyperconverged vendor out there for a while. But what I love about this too is you talked about this. I think you kind of talked about it in this way, but I envisioned you said this. But we're talking about a tiered approach, because now we have this solution on the edge, and you could have multiple edges, right? You could have this deployment in multiple edges if you're a retailer or whatever it is, and you have multiple edges. You can put a pretty low cost, simple solution that's highly available with SimpliVity in your edges. And then you can have the HPE Storage MP. And I think that's the foundation for DHCI, right? That's where you talked about the disaggregated. So talk about that side of it. Now, when we talk more about the enterprise scaled on the other edge of on the other side of the PCBE offering.
Absolutely, Calvin, and that's where the versatility of the solution comes into play, right? Now that you have SimpliVity, where you could have it for smaller deployments, you could scale SimpliVity too, but predominantly it's 2-node, 4-node kind of deployments. But then, if you want more high-end performance, high-end scalability, right? 100% uptime guarantees that not many vendors provide. You could look at running the Alletra DHCI with the Alletra Storage MP platform, right? On similar lines, ESG did a separate economic validation on, PCBE along with Alletra MP. And the example that they used is they ran a 121 mixed workload VMs, right? 121 VMs on different stacks, one with DHCI and other with competitive products. And they found out that, Private Cloud Business Edition with Alletra Storage MP delivers more than 2.5x in terms of total cost savings, right? And this cost savings are actually across multiple vectors, right? It's about cooling, power, sustainability stuff, right? Software licensing, cost to acquire, the amount of time that it takes for you to install and implement, right? It's a pretty detailed analysis that they've done. And this essentially also adds to the overall strategy where customers can leverage this 1-2 design, where going from disaggregated to hyperconverged and kind of saving costs going in their infrastructure.
Okay, so I think we've talked through kind of the strategize piece. I think that leads me to have you talk a little bit about modernize. And again, obviously, the focal point of what we're talking about here is private cloud business edition. I think you've hit a lot of this already, but talk to me about how this infrastructure, this solution helps customers to really modernize. And the element I want you to keep in mind is they're still going to have things in the public cloud. So even though the name of the product is Private Cloud Business Edition, it's still a hybrid solution, right?
Yeah. And, just to summarize what you just said, with their existing infrastructure in place, they could reevaluate using cloud physics, right? In that itself, you could do a lot of savings. And then by leveraging what we just discussed around being agile and strategize, they could look at re-evolving the infrastructure with what we provide with the private cloud. Now, taking a step further onto modernize, this actually tags on to what we announced at Discover this summer, right? Where we are announcing an alternative virtualization capability for private cloud. Now, this is, again, as the need of the hour. A lot of our customers have reached out to us saying, hey, I'm looking at alternatives, but, it just doesn't check these boxes. And of course, VMware is a mature technology. They've had this for more than 3 decades. But there is a need of the hour where customers are looking at diversifying their virtualization infrastructure, right? And that's where we had to take this opportunity in providing our customers with an alternative choice, right? And that's where we have tried to use our existing infrastructure components in place, but modernizing on the virtualization stack and providing our customers with an alternative solution.
Yeah, and I don't want to necessarily spend too much time mentioning Nutanix, but if customers doubt for a second that what HPE is trying to do is give customers choice, I mean, we offer Nutanix as a solution that customers can get from HPE that runs on a ProLiant. Mm-hmm. We really are here, like, Mr. Customer, you tell us what you need, and we will help you get there. And if that's continuing to run virtualization on VMware, we can help you with that. If you want to do something different, we can help you with that.
That's correct. Yeah, I mean, we don't envision customers moving away from VMware right off the gate, right? Because they've invested a lot of testing, validation, ecosystem of ISVs and different applications on VMware. So there's definitely a need to run them mission critical and so forth on VMware today, right? But there's also workloads where it could be offloaded to an alternative, and that's what we are saying, right? Leveraging the existing infrastructure that you have in play, you could essentially diversify your virtualization stack on running multiple of these to provide you more savings, as well as ease of administration, right? The goal also here is to provide a unified experience. It doesn't matter whether you use VMware or HPE's virtualization solution. We want to provide you with a unified experience that is cost effective for your environment.
So this just hit me. So we're talking almost like it's about like a 401k for your applications where you diversify your portfolio. And maybe you are going to keep your mission critical apps on VMware because that's not something you want to mess with anytime in the short term.
That's absolutely correct, Calvin. I mean, we've actually interviewed a lot of customers before and after the announcement, right? So it's going to be a combination. How it's hybrid between private and public cloud. I think the world is also going to be hybrid between VMware and an alternative, because I think, at least for a short term, right, until all the other virtualization stacks kind of catch up with some of the functionalities that VMware has. So yes, there's definitely, and I think that's where the HP's portfolio today is positioned in a way that you could parallelly run these, but also at the same time migrate a lot of these workloads away from VMware to save costs.
Okay, so that last of the 5 things was transform. So tell me how customers are going to be able to more easily transform and how HPE can help them with that transformation.
Yeah. So Calvin, just to summarize what we discussed, right? And that's essentially executing on that playbook will lead you to transformation, right? Assess your environment through cloud physics, understand what consolidation you can do in the environment, right? Select an architecture that fits your need, that could save you in terms of overall TCO. And again, there is different virtualization technologies that you could take advantage of and see which best fits your needs, right? And all of this compound to a saving of over 80% if you actually look at it. So that's how I see transforming your environment into a much more agile and cost-effective infrastructure.
So for people that want to learn more about HPE GreenLake for Private Cloud Business Edition, bear with me here because this is going to be it's supposed to be an easy URL, but it's not easy to say. So it's go to HPE.com/HPE-GreenLake-Private-Cloud-Business-Edition. So just think HPE GreenLake Private Cloud Business Edition and put a dash in between each of those. And I'll put the URL on the screen too so you can see it. So that's the URL to learn more. Bharath, how about if we take just a quick 5 seconds here and we'll get questions from the audience?
Absolutely.
Perfect. Well, we have lots of good questions coming in, so we are ready to get into it. Bharath and Calvin, thank you so much for such an interesting conversation. I like we have a comment back from the audience saying, "Oh, make it easy for us, why don't you?" You know what? We did make it easy for you because that link is right there in the handouts tab. We've got that in for you. Not only did Calvin put it up on the screen, but we've also put it in the handouts tab. So there you go. Head on over and make sure you snag that before you go. But before we jump in, Calvin, you had a question for our audience here. wondering about with Broadcom's licensing changes with VMware, what is the audience finding that their IT department, for all of you out there, where is your IT focusing? Are you kind of seeing no changes? Maybe you're keeping some VMware, but you're doing a little bit of a mixed strategy with hypervisors. Maybe you're moving everything that you can off VMware. Curious, Kelvin, what do you expect we're going to see back from the audience today?
I think it's and again, thanks for having us today. I think I've been a VMware V-expert, if people know what that is. I was a V-expert for like 14 years, so I love VMware. I have nothing against VMware, but I do think, as we talked about during our discussion, that there's lots of people that are seeing like huge increases in what VMware is now asking for licensing. So I think it's going to depend on whether or not you've been slapped in the face with the reality of what the new licensing fees are, or if you're still like running business as usual and you don't know what that looks like. But I'm guessing, there's going to be a fair amount of people that are going to say they're looking at changing or even moving everything off of VMware because of the licensing changes.
Well, should we show them the results? Should we pull up the audience results and see where we're at, Kelvin?
Yeah, let's do it. Okay,
perfect. All right. So, well, that fits in with what you were saying. What do you think?
It does. I'm kind of curious with the ones that are saying no change. Is it because you haven't seen the new licensing and you don't know what it's going to be, or is it because you're just willing to pay more? Again, it's kind of we've seen a lot of customers who've come to us and said, look, it's like from 3 to 10x more. So that's kind of another curious question of people who have seen what their new licensing costs are going to be. What is it? And if it's less than that, if you're like looking at only maybe 1.5 or 2x, then it's easy to say you won't change. But if you're on the 10x side, I think you're probably more likely to be somebody that's going to change.
Yeah, which probably, looking at it, we've got, it's almost an exact 50-50 split between change of some kind, and fully through to the no change at all. So if anyone has any thoughts, if you want to add to that context, please feel free to post in the question. I do see, Calvin, we did have one comment back. We have a 5-year licensing that was signed right before the Broadcom takeover. So we might be seeing those longer lasting contracts playing a part of this as well.
Yeah, I think so. And I think, I don't think it's unusual for people to sign, 3 to 5 year contracts. And given the licensing changes are pretty recent, you're probably not going to get an idea what those new prices are for another 3 to 5 years.
Right. Yeah. So this will be, we'll have you back, Kelvin, in a year or so, and we'll ask this question again, and then we can compare and contrast.
That sounds perfect.
Hopefully we'll have you back much sooner than that as well. But for this particular result, now I've also moved the poll screen for all of you out there, and we're going to ask you a new question. What we're wondering now is sort of about those next steps, about the follow-ups that you're looking for, because we're going to get into some questions with all of you right now. But Calvin and Bharath have given us a lot of information today, and there's obviously tons more to dig into. There's lots of ways to follow up. We've got the handouts in the resource tab for you right now. But if there was something really in particular that you would want to dig in, one of the things, Bharath and Kelvin, I thought you guys did a great job of chatting about today, was starting with existing infrastructure and then allowing for evolution. And so if you're wanting to kind of dig into what your current needs are and then where you would want to go, clicking on that poll right now, or think of it maybe as a wish list, and digging into maybe pricing information is more important to you. Maybe you want to see some case studies, or you're more interested in a demo, whatever it is, spend a little time with that. Well, you are all clicking on that. Calvin and Bharath, are you ready to dig into some of these audience questions?
Let's do it.
Absolutely.
Let's do it. We got lots of questions coming in. You guys definitely sparked the brains of our audience today. Let's start out with, so you got into a lot of chatting around cost, and that was certainly a big feature of our conversation today. We do have a few audience members that have been asking if we could maybe zoom in on that a little bit more, and especially around, Cal's wondering about the cost of VM management, and if you could provide some best practices for really reducing that cost. What do you think, Bharath?
Yeah, I think that's a great question. First of all, thanks for asking that. So I think the cost of virtual machine management can be achieved through multiple combinations, right? I would look at, first of all, automation and what we can do to kind of reduce the day-to-day stuff that becomes monotonous. Could be updating the infrastructure, could be provisioning VMs and so forth, right? What type of automation they can do. The other thing is resource optimization, right? I think right sizing and ensuring that the servers are highly dense. We can run more VMs on it. And that's why we focused on today about cloud physics, right? With cloud physics, you can figure out what are your unused VMs, which VMs are over provisioned, right? So these are things that you could actually take resources back or optimize your infrastructure to kind of have a better VM management experience, right? And then there's other avenues, right? Even it need not be VMs at the end of the day. You could actually look at containers, or you could look at bare metal, right? Where you could definitely look at optimizing the cost. Of course, the issue there is the manageability aspect, because then you would have VMs, containers, and bare metal. But I think that's where GreenLake and what we are providing that will play a pivotal role in that, right? And the other big thing is, and I'm pretty sure you guys are following the news, HPE recently bought Morpheus. So Morpheus brings in with it the cloud management platform, or CMP, right? So this now gives you a single pane of glass where you can essentially manage both VMs, containers, bare metal. It could be any Kubernetes distribution of your choice. You can bring in, you can manage your VMware assets, you can manage any other hypervisor assets as part of that, right? So it's a great, you would want to look at these combinations to see how you can kind of optimize your VM management experience.
I'm going to ask you to go back a step, because you mentioned, Bharath, in your answer, chatting a little bit about SimpliVity as well as GreenLake. And we did get a question wondering if you could give us a little compare and contrast between GreenLake and SimpliVity.
Yeah, I think we could have spent some time on the overall private cloud business edition portfolio, because that would have simplified a lot of these questions. So GreenLake, essentially the platform itself, is our HP's cloud platform, right? Where we build a lot of microservices across the board for different applications, different platforms, and so forth. SimpliVity is one platform that we support, which is a hyperconverged form factor, right? Along with the disaggregated HCI, or DHCI as it's called. And both of these platforms are two versions or offerings within the private cloud business edition solution, right? So if you were to buy a PCBE, in short, if you were to buy a PCB solution, you could either get SimpliVity as your underlying platform, or you could get DHCI as underlying platform. And this all depends on your cost, your form factor, where you're deploying an edge or core or data centers, right? So that'll dictate which platform type you choose. But SimpliVity is just another incarnation of our private cloud platform that you can leverage today.
Well, and I appreciate that. I think you're right. There's a lot to be said there, and probably, again, Bharath, we'll just have to keep doing these, because I think we'll have to have you come back to dig in and explore that even further. That there is a lot of really interesting opportunity here for people, and one of the things that you've talked about is the customization, the opportunities to make sure that it's matching what you need. Calvin, you said we start out with, what do you need as a customer? And one of the things that wondering a little bit, is there support or help for a customer that isn't sure what they need, and how much can they come to you, and could you help them kind of figure out what they need?
Yeah, I think there's all kinds of tools in the portfolio that can help. And I know, during the part where Bharath and I were talking, we talked about, cloud physics, and that's a great starting point. And again, if you look in the handouts, there is a link to the cloud physics webpage where you can request getting a free use of cloud physics. And that's really a great starting point to get a sense of what's going on in your environment. And Bharath, I know you probably understand it more than I do, but I would tell people, if you want to at least get a high level of what cloud physics does, if you Google HPE Cloud Physics Chalk Talk, you should see it come up on a Google search or in YouTube, and that'll give you a good starting point of what it does. But Bharath, why don't you talk a little bit more deeper than I can about what kinds of things can somebody see with cloud physics that could help them reduce their costs?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think one of the things that we usually get asked is, what do I do with cloud? How do I get access to it, right? So let me start with that, and then I'll tell you what you can actually do with cloud physics. So if you could reach out to your HPE seller or your partner or reseller that works with HPE, all of them can provide you access to this tool, right? It's free of charge, right? All you have to do essentially is download an OVA, and kind of run it on your VMware environment today, right? This setting it up and getting it up and running is pretty straightforward. There's an observer VM that is the appliance that runs on your vCenter that kind of picks up your all the data sets that we need, right? So the end of the analysis, what we kind of spit out is different reports, right? Reports around your host analysis. How are your hosts being leveraged for different resources in CPU, memory, and so forth, right? We also look at license inventory, how much of your licenses are being used, right? It gives you detailed reporting on those things. So then you can make a decision whether you want to move to VVF or VCF or VCF standard or some other hypervisor for that matter, right? To save you cost. There's also very detailed information about idle VMs, the VMs that has not been used in a while, right? How you could reclaim them back, because with the new VMware model, it's licensed per core. So you don't want to be running, whether you use it or not, you have to still pay for the core, right? So these are things that, when you move to your next infrastructure, you could kind of cut down on, right, in terms of idling of VMs. And of course, the VM right sizing, right? I've seen in many enterprise deployments where the VMs have been over provisioned than what it actually is required to be. So you could look at, what is the utilization of that VM has been over a period of time. How are you been running this analysis, right? And that'll allow you to resize some of those VMs. So these are great reports that comes out of this assessment. I think it's everyone in this call should be running, right? To understand your infrastructure much better, and then making a much more advised decision going forward on how you want to kind of move away or kind of diverse some of the workloads away from VMware.
Bharath, you've just given us, and thank you to both of you for your answers on that one, some really great actionable steps in terms of evaluating where you are before you're making changes, and avoiding that feeling of over provisioning just because you sort of start tacking things on. We did get a question in from the audience asking about best practices in terms of timing. Do you think those evaluations should be happening? Is this monthly, weekly, yearly, or what would you suggest?
Are you asking about the cloud physics assessment?
In particular, I think he's wondering more about public-private cloud balance, but in general,
I see. Gotcha.
Yeah.
No, that's a great question. I just feel, the world is going to be hybrid in two ways. Hybrid in the way that, you have both public and private cloud, because I don't think it makes sense in many enterprises where, they want to have much more faster deployments of VMs and then tear it down and so forth, right? So public cloud provides you that capability. However, moving everything to the public cloud is also not the right way to do, because the cost of living in the public cloud is like living in a hotel versus owning your own home, right? It's cheaper for the short term, but it's in the long term it's not, right? But 80%, what we've seen is 80% of enterprises have adopted a multi-cloud strategy, right? But 90% of that feel that private cloud, which is on-prem, is more suitable for running mission-critical workloads and so forth. Because there's other things around compliance and having data sets in your data center and not in the public cloud. It becomes mandatory, and it's also much easier to control your destiny when you have everything on-prem. So it's going to be a combination of both. The other big hybrid I talked about that is going to happen is around VM and containers, Kubernetes as well, right? I think all of you should look at investing outside of virtual machines and see how your VMs can start running on Kubernetes-based containers, right? That's very critical going forward as well.
Well, speaking of timing, we have got a question here about the HPE virtualization capability. When is that going to be available with HPE Private Cloud Business Edition?
Yeah, a great question. The engineering is the development team is kind of heads down on getting this worked out right now as we speak. So the initial plan is to run a beta by end of this year, right? So we had a lot of nominations that we put forth at Discover this year, and then we got a lot of nominations that we've gone through, and we selected a few customers to kind of go through the beta beta process. Our goal currently is to release the first version of the HPE virtualization solution for PCBE early next year, right? So it'll be really early in the year is what we're targeting. But you'll hear and see a lot of the details about this product, demos and videos and blogs come out close to that timeline.
Well, okay, I hate to say this, but we are getting close to the time when we're going to start to wrap things up. So 2 comments on that. 1, I know it's a bummer. And 2, I do want to say for everyone out there that is still asking questions, I see those questions coming in. We are going to make sure that all of those get sent to the HPE team. So you will get responses back, even if we don't get to you live. So keep those questions coming in. And if we haven't answered your question, there are responses coming back to you. But before we sort of wind things up and head on out, Calvin and Bharath, I'd love to, just because I can feel the passion from both of you about everything we've talked about today. And I think there's a lot to be excited here. For some of us, this was a fiscal year end for a lot of organizations. So I'm kind of in this weird New Year's mindset. I'm already feeling like it's 2025 right now. So I'm going to put you guys into my headspace of looking ahead at 2025. With that in mind, Calvin and Bharath, could I ask each of you for something that you're excited about looking ahead and either coming from HPE or just sort of a general trend that gets you excited? Calvin, maybe I'll get you to start us out.
Okay. Well, it really is this idea of GreenLake. And while, I've hesitated during my very long career to jump on trends that seem to be like marketing hype versus the real thing. We're hearing a lot of people talking about AI, and the cool thing with GreenLake is that it's a place where you could start. So whether you're looking for compute infrastructure, if you're looking for, virtualization resources that we're kind of talking about here, whether that's VMware or what's coming, if it's AI, there's all kinds of things that you can get and try out within the platform. And Bharath kind of hit on this, and he talked about these microservices. Think of GreenLake like a big Lego platform, and maybe big isn't the right word, but now you can grab the Lego brick you want and put it on top of GreenLake to run what it is you want to run. And then when you decide you're not running that anymore, you just pick that off and you stop paying for it. So it's really a great way to test things out. And for people who are thinking about AI as an example, it's a great platform to consider where you can start and play small and grow big as you really start to focus in on what you're doing around AI.
Ooh, I love that. I love think small and play big. I think that's an amazing, and Lego is the perfect analogy for that, Calvin. That's a really good reason to be excited. Bharath, what's got you pumped up and excited looking ahead? Oh, sorry, Bharath, we've got you muted. There you are.
Yeah, sorry about that. I think as Calvin mentioned, AI and the latest around virtualization are the 2 big things that we are excited internally from HPE, right? Because with AI, there's so many things that's possible, and I think the undercurrent for both of these is private cloud, right? So what we are building at HPE is this common solution or common platform, I should say, with the private cloud that allows you to kind of diversify your choice for virtualization, yet provide you your opportunity to run AI-based workloads, right? It could be RAG models, it could be any of the tooling that we are seeing with AI. We want to provide that as part of the same private cloud experience, right? So we are really excited. We recently announced PC AI, private cloud for AI recently, that is available for ordering. So if you guys haven't looked at it, take a look at it. And then, as I mentioned, the virtualization that is also coming up will allow our customers to get another choice point for virtualization. So these 2 are the 2 things that excite me. Cannot wait for customer adoption and feedback, and that we can kind of take back and make the product even better going forward.
I think that's so cool that you guys have that. And I feel that from your team every time I talk to HPE is that excitement about innovation, the excitement to constantly evolve, and you back it up with what you bring to the table and to the conversation. So I love that. And for anyone out there that is excited to play and wants to jump in and start learning more, other than clicking on the screen right now, Calvin, give us a first step to grabbing that first Lego piece.
I think if you don't have a great understanding already of GreenLake, I'd say getting that like framework and that basic understanding of what GreenLake can do. And, I do a lot of videos. You saw in my bio that I consider myself a YouTuber. If you Google HPE GreenLake overview Chalk Talk, you will come to my Chalk Talk that I think is probably one of the best 5-minute overviews you will see of what GreenLake can do. So to me, that's the starting point. For people that are maybe a little bit further down the road and they're really liking what they're hearing about PCBE, Private Cloud Business Edition. One thing we didn't give as a resource, but it's really, they tend to be my favorite kind of things you can get from HPE, and they're these things called quick specs. So if you Google HPE GreenLake for Private Cloud Business Edition quick spec, and that's QUI CKSPECS quick specs. These are usually really well-written documents that don't have a bunch of marketing fluff. I hate marketing gobbledygook. I work in marketing gobbledygook, but it makes me want to throw up when I see marketing speak. The quick specs are real layman's language about what something does. So I would absolutely encourage people to Google the quick spec for HPE Private Cloud Business Edition. If you have any trouble finding it, I'm easy to find on Twitter as Calvin Zito. I'm easy to find on LinkedIn. And I'm happy to help you find what resources you think you need to continue to investigate what HPE is offering and what we're talking about these days.
And I did find that quick spec as you were chatting, Calvin. So I posted the link in the questions window right now. So anyone looking for it, it is both as easy as Calvin said to just Google search. And also I have posted a link in the questions tab. I think that that's really nice to have. There's a time and a place where it's really fun to see all the graphics and the marketing details. And there's a time and a place when you just want to get right into it. This is a great takeaway.
Yeah, totally. And I think for anything that you might be thinking about from HPE, whether it's a ProLiant, I should be careful and not say Cray supercomputer, because I can't say I've gone out and looked at a Cray supercomputer to see if they actually are into doing quick specs yet. But a quick spec is always a great place for the technologist to look to see what is this thing and what does it do.
Awesome. Well, I think you've given us some great follow-ups. I want to remind people as well that we've got the handouts tab, which is absolutely full of resources. And so there is that economic validation on the economic benefits of HPE GreenLake for Private Cloud Business Edition with HPE SimpliVity for Edge. That is the long version of the sort of acronym-filled version that you're seeing in that handouts tab. So click on that. You can also go explore the HPE Cloud Physics, revolutionize your hybrid cloud strategy, and HPE GreenLake for Private Cloud Business Edition. So I think Bharath and Calvin, the link that we've got in here going to the Cloud Physics, Bharath, you were telling us about that, option to do the survey, and that's totally free. That's a great next step, right? That would be a good place to kind of get started, see if that's a good fit.
Absolutely. Yeah, the assessment is what I would recommend. And we covered this as part of the 5 ways to save, right? The assessment will actually set you up to figure out what your next steps are. I know a lot of you are in the process of renewing your VMware license, have already done it, but running the assessment is not going to hurt anything. If you're in the process actually in figuring out if you want to renew it, running the assessment now would be an ideal way to understand what's in environment and how you can right size it, right? So definitely recommend you doing that right away.
Well, Calvin and Bharath, I hate to say that we're going to have to leave it there because we do still have quite a few questions coming in. I am going to make sure that those get sent over to the team. I also want to tell you that we've gotten some great high fives and shout outs from folks in the audience really enjoying the conversation today. And I have as well. Thank you both so much for being here with me.
Absolutely. Our pleasure to be here with you.
Likewise. Thank you very much.
All right. And to our wonderful audience, keep those questions coming in. We absolutely want to. And the high fives. I like the high fives too. Keep the questions, keep the high fives. This is great. Thank you for joining us, Thomas. I see your comment as well. Just a lot of fun chatting with all of you today. And like I said, I know there's so much more to dig into. So stay tuned. We'll have to pick up this conversation again because there's some great things to explore with this team here. All right. Well, speaking of exploring, I hope that you've all visited that handouts tab. Make sure you're clicking on all of those handouts, open those those up, save those for later, because I promise, this is just the tip of the conversation, right? Now you get to explore on your own. And those resources are a great way to do that, to make sure that you have the information that you need and you can keep kind of digging into what Calvin and Bharath opened up for us today. And then hopefully reach out to HPE and continue chatting with them as well. All right, while you're doing that, while you're clicking on the handouts tab, while you're clicking on the poll, we are going to get into some more excitement because we have a prize giveaway for all of you. So we've got a $250 Amazon gift card going to someone who is here live, present, and as always, a little bit lucky at the webinar today. And that special somebody getting a $250 Amazon gift card is David Neisser from Ohio. David Neisser from Ohio. All right, David, well, congratulations. We will be in touch about claiming your prize after we wrap. And with that, on behalf of the actual Tech Media team, I want to once again thank Hewlett Packard Enterprise for making this webinar possible, and especially to our incredible speakers here with us, Calvin and Bharath. What an interesting conversation. I really love these types of chats where we can sort of see where the speakers are passionate, what they're interested in exploring, and what they're kind of seeing coming ahead for all of us, and how we're seeing things evolve. I think we've said this 100 times, and it continues to be true. Everything that we sort of knew is changing, and everything that we understood is evolving. And so that constant iterative need for learning, for conversation, is exactly what brings us here together today. And I know that it can be difficult to step away from your workday and take time on your lunch break, or maybe stepping out of meetings, running in between things, and stop and listen and learn and think about how we could maybe do things a little bit better. And that's what I think we really got into today, is not just saying, we got to get rid of everything, but how can we improve what we're doing now, and how can we evolve with the times and look ahead and then look out at where we're going. So I'm very excited about where you all go from here. I'm excited to see what kinds of conversations you kickstart from here. And I want to thank you all for joining us today, for asking some great questions and being a part of this conversation. I hope that I get to see you all at a webinar again soon. And until then, have an absolutely beautiful end to your day. Thanks, my friends.